Right now, more than 500,000 people in the high-risk threat zone for life-threatening flash flooding. The Weather Prediction Center calling for, quote, prolific rainfall, with rainfall rates as high as 2 inches per hour at times, setting the stage for extremely dangerous conditions. More than half a foot of rain could fall in parts of Texas and Louisiana. Some of that's going to fall in just a few hours. We've got you covered here on Weather Unfiltered. Thanks for being with us. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, as always, joined by our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb. A lot of concern for a really dangerous day.
Yeah, is it okay if I'm truly unfiltered for just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay, now, we evacuate for storm surge, for tropical storms and hurricanes. We haven't yet gotten to the point where officials call for evacuations ahead of inland flooding. But if I live in that high-risk zone and I see what I've been through the last couple weeks, while you still have time, might you want to consider going to stay with someone else this evening and overnight who lives in higher ground, just so you don't have to possibly get in that situation where you need a water rescue at your home and you can't get around your community that's flooded? Just a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a bad idea. And again, staying off the roads really going to be critical in these areas as flash flood warnings go into effect, as water covers roadways. Staying out of vehicles, really important. Dallas, one of the spots that is at least dealing with the likelihood of flash flooding, not in that high risk, but this is an area that's got heavy rain on the way. This is an area that's been soggy, and we've got a lot of pavement.
We've had some really heavy rain on the west side of the Metroplex, the south side of the Metroplex. The airport has been a mess day, huge delays at Dallas-Fort Worth, and so you're not going anywhere quickly today there.
Yeah, but Houston, New Orleans, you're not in the highest risk area, but you're at risk in those urban areas tonight into tomorrow and tomorrow night. So a lot of folks could be dealing with the water.
Yeah, it's going to be a real problem. We look at the Dallas hourly forecast, and this is why, right? We've got rain, and more rain. Thunderstorms also. Those could produce some of those heavier rainfall rates. So be prepared for a day where more often than not it's going to be raining. I think by late evening we see a little bit of dry time. But again, Mike, that means for folks late day drive, we could have water covered roadways, some inaccessible roads. It
really could. And you think about how many people drive during that morning rush or that evening rush. You're putting so many cars on the roads, and then you have to encounter high water, or you've got to encounter torrential downpours or even hail or high winds. All those things become a factor in creating very dangerous conditions for you on the roads. So severe thunderstorm watch in effect here. It includes around Abilene and San Angelo, Waco, and Austin. A lot of storms have happened for us today that have produced high winds and hail. A lot of storms produce some hail in this cluster right in here. Little cluster up in here, actually outside of the watch area, that has produced some hail as well. But one of the recurring themes in all of these storms is really heavy rainfall rates. And so numerous flash flood warnings are happening for us right now, including in Bosque, Johnson, and Somerville counties right now. Those all have areas where we've got a warning until 3:15 this afternoon. We've got warnings down from Waco to Buffalo here, Falls, Freestone, and Limestone County under that flash flood warning until 3:30. If you're in Belmead or Waco, again, please be aware of how many areas you're taking on high water and what a danger that may be to you. In the last 3 hours, anywhere between, say, 1.2 and 2.2 inches of rain, more than enough to cause us some flash flooding because we've got saturated ground right now. And if you look at this stat, pretty impressive. In this area that we're highlighting on the screen here, about 2,300 cloud to ground lightning strikes in just the last 15 minutes. So a very electrified storm system. It really tells you that the storms are built pretty tall. So you got a lot of ice and snow up into the top of these storms. And so you get this electrical charge that happens. And next thing you know, you've just got huge downpours. That's really happening for us right now from Dallas down towards San Angelo to Austin. And it's really going to be a problem for us in this area here not long from now. Some storms are already starting to get into East Texas where we have a high risk for flash flooding. Here's the high resolution future radar. Very concerned about what kind of rainfall rates we see here from Austin to Lufkin toward Lake Charles and Alexandria. Rainfall rates here might even exceed 2 inches an hour. Really heavy duty stuff for us around 7 o'clock this evening from Houston to Alexandria to Lake Charles. Those storms will be there through the evening, breaking up a bit overnight tonight. But at that point, the damage will have been done. We'll see a continuation of flooding right through the evening. Another line of storms that could come in middle of night from Austin up to Waco here on I-35. Knowing what these rainfall rates could be, Dr. Knabb, it's no wonder we've got a high-risk flood day today. What are those areas in particular? What do you think happens there?
Well, that Piney Woods area north of Houston, Huntsville over to Jasper, Lufkin. It's the high rain rates, but it's also how much rain has fallen recently. I don't think we'd be in a high risk if we hadn't gotten so much rain recently. And these high-risk days are thankfully very rare. Only about 4% of the days in a calendar year does the Weather Prediction Center designate as a high-risk day for flooding, but those days disproportionately take lives and cause damage. 39% of flood fatalities historically, on average, occur on these high-risk days, with 83% of the flood damages occurring on these days. And even though not everybody in East Texas and Louisiana is in a high-risk area, there is some reason to be concerned even in these yellow areas, which includes Dallas, College Station, north side of Houston, because even in the moderate risk areas, that's where we get 17% of our annual flood fatalities. So we have a lot of people that need to be careful in a lot of East Texas and into Louisiana, where we are used to this kind of event. This is where most of the high-risk days have occurred, a dozen to a dozen and a half in the last decade. But every system is different. So if you didn't get flooded in some previous event, what if tonight is the night that it happens in your community? When you've got a flood watch, you might think, well, we get flood watches all the time. But this is not your everyday flood watch, even though they don't say so like they do for tornado watches. This is a particularly dangerous situation, mainly because of how much rain we've had recently. That has caused the soil to be so saturated in East Texas that it can't absorb any more rain. I mean, it's all going to be runoff. And then when it tries to run off into the creeks, streams, and rivers, they're already high, and they're going to get higher over the next several days. Even after the rain stops tonight, over the weekend, we could have rising rivers. So the flood problems could actually get worse in some spots after the event is over. With the rainfall, that's going to be a lot of rain over a large area. It's the volume of water that's the problem, not what fills up one particular rain gauge. Several of us are going to get 3 to 5 inches. A few of us could get 6 to 8 inches of rain locally. But the potency of this upper level system, look at how the atmosphere is splitting apart over East Texas and Louisiana. That's causing all kinds of lift in the atmosphere and the surface low to form. And that low is bringing moisture off the Gulf of Mexico in tremendous amounts. And then there's this boundary, this warm front that keeps moving into the high risk zone as a developing mesoscale convective system and the cold front move it along and rides along that boundary. So there's going to be even more lift, even higher rain rates in East Texas than what we've seen from Austin to Waco and to Dallas. So the rain rates are only going to get worse. So this is the lead flash flood warning here, Waco eastward, but we're going to get a lot more warnings over the next few hours in places like Huntsville and Lufkin and Jasper. Watch how the future radar shows the persistence of the heavy rainfall. Even though the whole system might be moving along at a decent clip, when you get 3, 4, 5 hours of 2 to 3 inch per hour rain rates at times, the rainfall is going to add up. It's going to fall very quickly, and the flooding could happen very rapidly, truly flash flooding in that situation, even though by maybe 9, 10 o'clock tonight in the highest risk areas in Texas, it's over, and then it lasts longer into Louisiana. And then we've got the flood risk farther to the east tomorrow and tomorrow night for areas like Baton Rouge and Hattiesburg, Mobile up to Montgomery. So, Alex, the key here is fatalities are avoidable, even if the damage is hard to prevent. If we don't get into the water, don't drive into it, and maybe stay with someone who lives on higher ground this afternoon and evening.
Absolutely. It is these high-risk days that are the most dangerous. And here's one of the reasons why. Dr. Nab pointing out that people underestimate the power of water. We're just not afraid enough of it. This was College Station just a few weeks ago, where the driver here unknowingly drove right into the creek, thinking she was making a turn onto the roadway and that the road was covered in water. Nope, that's a creek that she's about to move into, and you'll see she just plops right in the creek. She was able to be rescued, luckily, but we know and we have seen situations like this end very differently and tragically. Well, unfortunately, flood has already claimed lives this year. We've had 18 deaths in 2024 because of flooding, 9 of those, 50%, when people are driving. So people in vehicles getting into floodwaters, intentionally or not, too many times that causes loss of life. Also walking, hiking, falling in, and of course the other category. But that's why I say you got to keep the kids away from, some of these high creeks and streams. They're running fast. They're interesting to look at, but too many times people get too close to the water and find themselves a victim as well. So we don't want you to get caught off guard when there is the threat of flooding. So here are some important safety tips to know.
Floods, The dangers are often underestimated, threatening property and lives. Flooding is one of the deadliest natural disasters. With incredible force, a flash flood can sweep away a person in just 6 inches of water and a large vehicle in just 2 feet of water. So it's important to be prepared and know what to do. Never try to walk or swim through a flooded area if there's moving water. If you come across a flowing stream where water is above your ankles, stop, turn around, and go another way. Remember, floodwaters can move 6 to 12 miles an hour, exerting a force that can easily knock you off your feet. Stay away from downed or broken power lines and any exposed electrical wires. Even if you don't see a spark, they can still be alive and extremely dangerous because electrical currents can travel through water and cause electrocution. Do not drive through flooded areas. The flowing water can be very deceptive, making it impossible to determine how deep the water really is. Although vehicles are heavy and stable on dry ground, in a flood, they will float and drift quickly, losing contact with the road.
All right, live look at Birmingham, Alabama on the left, Hattiesburg, Mississippi on the right. Both looking good now, but both at risk for flooding into tomorrow. So Friday into the start of the weekend, we've got that risk of flash flooding extending farther to the east. So we've got to watch parts of Mississippi, parts of Alabama, even into Georgia, even parts of the Atlanta metro area could be looking at some localized flash flooding. There's the likelihood tomorrow into early Saturday, greatest risk zone.